The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
70,000 people are here, and Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by the true story.
If anyone is going to hold your attention on stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17 and admitted without parent.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
My dad bought me a ticket to San Francisco and gave me $100, and they said goodbye.
Hello, and welcome to another new episode of Live Through That. I'm your host, Mike Hipple, and on this podcast, we'll dig a little deeper into a pivotal moment into the lives of some of my favorite artists from the 80s and 90s. We're back this week with a brand new episode. And our guest today might not be someone you're super familiar with, but she's got an incredible story and is well worth your time seeking out. It's Pearl Harbour. In 1980, she had a minor hit with the song Driving with her band Pearl Harbour and the Explosions. After the band broke up, she got involved with the Clash's bassist Paul Simonon and moved to London, quickly becoming enamored with a more rock and roll sound. She recorded the rockabilly album Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost Too, which kind of got lost in the world of record company politics, but found new life this year with the reissue on Liberation Hall Records. She's got lots of fascinating stories to share, so I'll let Pearl do the talking. Let's start with why Warner Brothers didn't push that groundbreaking record.
They signed Pearl Harbour and the Explosions, a San Francisco band, and they loved our band, and they loved the Pearl Harbour and the Explosions record that they put out, and they spent a lot of money on us. I mean, you know, they gave us like $250,000, sent us on tour all over the world. We did 3 months touring with the Talking Heads. They did so much to promote us, and they spent so much money that after the tour, I said, I don't want to be in Pearl Harbour and the Explosions anymore, but I want to move to London and make a rock and roll record. And that made them really angry. They were like, oh my gosh, you're kidding. We just spent all this money on you, and now and do you know how lucky you are? It was kind of like being in the office with your mom and dad, and they're yelling at you saying, you know, do you know what we've done for you, and what are you doing? Why are you doing this to us? We've been good to you, and now you're completely leaving the project that we signed you for, and you're going to London. And I said, well, I can't help it, because I didn't enjoy that band, and I didn't enjoy that music, and I wanted to make rock and roll, and I met people who want to help me make a rock and roll record in London, and that's what I want to do. So it's kind of like, what could they say? So they So then when I moved to London, they hooked me up with WEA, which is Warner's Electra and Asylum, and that's what because it's not called Warner Brothers in the UK. Anyways, they welcomed me, and they're a lot more open-minded in Great Britain, because they love all sorts of music, whereas. And they sort of were mildly, aware of rockabilly, because the Brits have always liked rockabilly music, but in America they weren't at all. And so when I handed them my album, they hated it, whereas the English people liked it. So, but it was the Americans who signed me, and when they heard the album, they kind of just said, "Forget it," and sort of like didn't promote the album, and just sort of let me go. They let me off the label. After I made Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost Too, I made a single with Wilco Johnson, Voodoo Voodoo, which is on the record. And then after that, I had done some touring in Japan, and I was very popular in Japan because of the Clash. I went over there with the Clash. They went over there once, and I went over there with them because I was with Paul. And I sang Fujiyama Mama, which is on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And so then the Japanese associated me with the Clash, and so I already had a big push in Japan because they knew who I was. So I got signed to Epic Sony in Japan, and then they put me on a big tour and had me record an album with English guys from different English guys than I used on Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost Too. And then so then I started doing a lot of stuff in Japan, and then I signed to Island Records in England, and they sort of re-released my Japanese album, but they took out a few of the songs and then had me re-record a few new ones. But both of those albums are not available anywhere, and I wanted to re-release them, but they both said no. Island and Epic Sony said no.
Pearl's backing band on the project included members of the Blockheads and the Clash. Warner Brothers wanted to promote the record by insinuating it was an extension of those bands, but Pearl refused.
I met the Clash and the Blockheads through Cosmo Vinyl, who was their personal manager. He was personal manager of the Clash and the Blockheads. So when I arrived, I'd already met Ian Dury and the Blockheads and the Clash before I moved to London, and they all expressed, nice feelings towards me, and said they, if I moved to London, they would be happy to work with me. So that's why I knew when I moved to London that I was going to have a good thing going, because these people had already said, "Oh, we like you. Yeah, we'll work with you." So Cosmo arranged all of that. And so Cosmo had organized all that for me to play with, for these guys to play with me. And then when the record was finished, it was all so very, punk rock feelings in those days. I wasn't a punk rocker, but I was certainly hanging around with the best of them. So Cosmo and I talked about it, that it would be way cooler of me to not have anyone's names credited, because the British press, since I was an unknown artist in the UK and in Europe mostly, for them to say, here's a new album by Pearl Harbor and it's featured, and the players are the Clash and the Blockheads. I felt like the British press were going to just jump on me, which they did anyways, and just say, "Oh, who is this, unknown American idiot with, and the only reason anybody is listening to it is because the Clash and the Blockheads are playing on it." And I didn't really want that to happen. I think I made the wrong decision, but at the time my feelings were true, and I just felt like I didn't want all these people to say, that the only reason why I was interested was because those guys. I wanted people to listen to the record and not know who it was, and then decide for themselves if they liked it or not. And then the record company went ballistic over that one, because that was their only hope in hell of promoting the album that they didn't like, was, well, we don't like this record, but at least we can sell some because these guys are on it, and I didn't really like that either. like I said, I'm not sure I made the right decision, but at the time I was sticking to my guns, and that's something I've always done. And I've spoiled a lot of things by sticking to my guns, but it's okay.
Pearl was ahead of the pack with her rockabilly-inspired album. It would be another year or so until the Stray Cats brought rockabilly to the mainstream. I was curious as to how Pearl became interested in the genre.
I used to hang out at a record store in Northern California in Mill Valley. That's in Marin County. It's just north of San Francisco. And this guy had the best record store in the world. And I used just to hang out there all the time. It was called Village Music. It's closed now. And the owner used to, because I was just a kid, so the owner would let me just sit in his record store, and I would ask him to play me all of his favorite female vocalists. So when he played me Wanda Jackson, that was it. I said, "Oh my God, that's what I want to be. Is I want to be her." And so, because that's the way I thought back then. So, anyways, then I bought all of her records. I have I don't know how many Wanda Jackson albums. I think I might have them all. But at any rate, I did listen to her, country crooning and her rockabilly stuff, and I really liked it. And I said, "Oh, I wanted this. I've always liked this." And I've always collected old 50s records, so I have a whole ton of old country and old rock and roll records. Everything from Gene Vincent to whatever, Buddy Holly and all the black artists too. Howlin' Wolf, everybody. So that's why, as soon as I heard Wanda Jackson, that was what turned me on to rockabilly, really. And then when I moved to London, rockabilly already was a small scene over there. It was a no scene in the United States, but they had rockabilly clubs and they had rockabilly record stalls, and that was really at the flea markets. So I, found a lot of really cool rockabilly records, and then I met Cosmo introduced me to Nigel Dixon, who had a rockabilly band called Whirlwind. So they were kind of the most popular rockabilly band in England. And so Nigel and I wrote a lot of the songs on this album together, and I just hung out with him a lot and learned everything I could about rockabilly. And then so that was that. And then next thing you knew, a year or two later, just like you said, the Stray Cats arrived, and they first went to London, and they became popular in London before they were popular in the States. So I saw their first gig at a little pub, and they were supporting Whirlwind, my guitar player's band, and they were fantastic. So I kind of knew that they were going to be big. They were really good.
And now we have not only the Clash, but Pearl Harbour. You remember Pearl Harbour? Fujiyama mama.
Going back a little bit, one of Pearl's first pivotal moments that led her on the journey to becoming a musician was moving to San Francisco from Germany, where she was living with her family.
I always knew that I wanted to be a singer, and so I was also one of those teenagers that was always in trouble at school and got caught, taking drugs, blah, blah, blah. And so I said to my parents when I was 17, I want to move to San Francisco, and I want to, be in a band, and I want to be a musician, and I want to be a singer. And my parents said, okay. And then my dad bought me a ticket to San Francisco and gave me $100, and they said goodbye. I think they were glad that I was going. I mean, my parents loved me, of course, but I was a bad kid and I was always in trouble. And so when I said, I'm going to San Francisco, whether you like it or not, they kind of said, oh, go ahead and go. So I did. I met a guy in Munich. I was going to Munich High School. And then I dropped out of Munich High School and I met this American guy. And he lived in Mill Valley, which was just by San Francisco. So, he said, oh, well, I'm going to San Francisco if you want to come with me. So I did. So at least my parents were happy I wasn't alone. And that was a very weird experience because I was very hippie-ish and looked very disheveled. And as soon as I arrived in Chicago, I was 17 years old. They strip searched me and had all kinds of unkind things to say to me when I arrived in the United States, and I was sort of heartbroken. And then I arrived in San Francisco. That was mind blowing because San Francisco is such a beautiful city. Number one. Number two, the guy that I was with, he lived outside of San Francisco, and that was really beautiful. Marin County is known for its landscape. It's just all mountains and forests, and it's just really, and then the San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate Bridge, all that junk. It was just really, really amazing. And the guy's name was Mitchell. So I was staying at his house for a little while. I moved a lot when I first moved there because I didn't know what I was doing or what was going on. But my best story from when I was 17, I had only been at Mitchell's house for about 2 weeks or something. And there's a knock on the door, and Mitchell's brother was a coke dealer. And so at that time, everybody, all the people were doing cocaine. I didn't go for that stuff, but that's another story. Anyways, you knock on the door, and I open the door, and it's Neil Young. And I loved Neil Young. Me and my brothers, we had all his records and we knew all the lyrics and everything. I opened the door. It's 1973. Oh my God, there is fucking Neil Young standing right in front of me. I didn't know what to do, and I was such a shy kid that he goes, "Oh, hi, is Mitch there?" And I goes, "No," and then I slammed the door in his face. I couldn't help it. I was terrified, and then apparently he told Mitchell what I had done, and he thought it was hilarious because I'm probably the only girl in the world that didn't just grab his arm and say, "No, but come on in." I didn't do anything. I was just scared. And he said, "Oh, she's cute or something. Who is she?" And then he said, "Oh, she just arrived from Germany." And he said, "Oh, I'd like to go out with her. You think she'd go out with me?" So Mitchell asked me if I'd go out with Neil Young, and I said no. I was too scared. I was a kid. I couldn't go out with a rock star. I just couldn't. I wish that I had now, but I'd probably have a totally different life. I would have become a totally different person if I'd gone out with him. Who knows? But that story just cracks me up when I think about it, because that's what happened when I first moved there. I had read all about San Francisco, because my dad got Time magazine and Life magazine, and they were always talking about the hippies in San Francisco and the drug scene and the music scene and all that stuff. And so I read all about San Francisco, and that was my dream to go there because it seemed to be the place to be. Immediately when I got there, unfortunately, I was at a bus stop and some guy pulled over. I'd only been there for about a month and a half, and some guy pulled over and said, you want to ride? And I got in the car, and of course I got raped and beat up. So, and that happened to me twice. But the other time I didn't get in somebody's car. Someone knocked on my apartment door. They saw me going in, and I'm just this young kid with long hair and big boobs, and I'm sure they're all like, "Oh, I like that one." So this guy followed me home and knocked on my door and asked me if he could use my bathroom. And like an idiot, I said, sure, and let him come in. And that was another, got raped and beat up. And then that was kind of an interesting way to, and all this happened very soon after I had just moved there. I never told my parents or anything because they would have probably said, you're coming back home or something like that. So didn't really talk to very many people. But the most interesting thing that happened about those rapes was that one time, soon after the second one, there was a knock at the door, and I opened the door, and it was these two women, and I just thought, oh no, and they said, we're here because we can see in our records that in the past year you've been raped and beat up twice, and we want to know why you don't come to our support meetings, because there are support meetings for women, and I was invited to them and I didn't go. And I said, oh, I don't like to go to meetings, and I don't like to talk to people, and I know what happened to me, and I know I just had some bad luck, and I'm not afraid of men, and I don't feel like I need to talk to a doctor or anything like that. So then they said, well, may we come in? I said, sure. And they said, we want to talk to you. I said, okay. And they said, well, first of all, why do you think that they said, you're a victim. You've been a victim twice. Do you understand that? I said, yes. And they said, do you know why you were a victim? I said, well, I don't know. I guess it's because I have long hair and big boobs. And they said, well, that's right. And they said, so if you're not going to, we want to teach you how to protect yourself. And so we're going to tell you that whenever you go out, because I lived alone, they said, whenever you go out, you wear a jacket or a coat that's buttoned up to your neck and it's not showing any of your body, and you wear sunglasses. And when you wear sunglasses, whether it's at night, whenever you're by yourself, you wear sunglasses, because perverts like to look in your eyes and see fear and all that stuff. So if they see a person with sunglasses, they just sort of pass them by. They're not interested. And the only reason I'm telling this story is because I hope if any young girls are listening, they take that advice, because it worked. I've never had any trouble since then. And it's true, whenever I'm by myself, if I'm wearing a mini skirt and a low cut top, you wear a coat over that. Even if it's hot out, you cover yourself up and wear sunglasses, and you're not going to get messed with. And that's something really important that I learned, and it helped me throughout my whole life. So I think that's sort of the most interesting thing about such an awful story. I arrived in San Francisco in 1973, and then I went to lots of different concerts to, get myself involved in the music scene, see what was going on, see all the local bands and whatnot. And I saw the Tubes in 1975, and the Tubes were a rock and roll band that, had a fantastic show. They had all these dancers, they had all these people who were great sets. It was like a rock and roll circus. It was incredible. And I said, I want to be in that band. So then in 1976, I saw that they were having a talent contest. So I entered their talent contest by tap dancing and boxing. So I was a tap dancing boxer, and I won their talent contest. So I started, so that was the beginning of my rock and roll career, really, was October of 1976. The prize, if you won the contest, was that you got to perform with the band for 3 weeks at Bimbo's nightclub, which was a really nice nightclub in San Francisco, and they had it booked for 3 weeks. So I did those 3 weeks with the Tubes tap dancing, and they sort of added me into lots of, they had me playing percussion, they had me singing background vocals, they had me doing lots of things the more I performed with them, because they liked me, and I guess they could see that I was capable of doing a lot more than just tap dancing. And then there was a woman in the Tubes named Jane Dornacher, and she had a band called Leland the Snakes. And at that time, it was an all-girl band. So she asked me if I wanted to be in her band as well. So that was really the beginning of me learning all about singing and dancing, really, because we played all the time with Leela and the Snakes, whereas the Tubes, I was just sort of like an extra, you know. And with Leela and the Snakes, you know, we play pretty much once a week, and you have to do 4 sets a night. You play from 9 in the evening till 2 in the morning. And so you really learn your stuff when you're working that hard. But I made a lot of money and had a lot of fun, and I learned all the ropes. And then when I was in Leela and the Snakes, after a couple of years, I decided to leave that and start my own band. And so I started Pearl Harbor and the Explosions with the bass player and the drummer, who also had been playing in Leela and the Snakes. And then, so then we started writing music and performing. And then I didn't realize it at the time because it was my first band, but I didn't really get along musically very well with the band, you know, because they really like jazz music, and I really didn't like jazz music. And so they wanted to do more fusion, more interesting. They wanted to do new wave, and I wanted to do rock and roll. So we didn't really get along musically. So that's why it didn't last very long, me with the Explosions.
In August of 2023, Pearl was diagnosed with lung cancer, which proved to be the latest pivotal moment in her life.
I was diagnosed last August, and I really lucked out because I didn't have any symptoms, and I didn't know I had cancer. And my primary care physician said, "Oh, well, you smoked for 50 years. Have you ever had a lung cancer screening?" I said, "No." And she said, "Oh, I think you should do one." And so that's how I found out I had cancer. And so I was really lucky because they caught it, you know, at a fairly early stage. And so that was lucky and unlucky, and it was really, really scary because everybody knows that when you're told you have cancer, you go, "Oh no," and you think you're going to die, and you really think you might die because lung cancer people, a lot of times they do die. So anyways, they did 2 surgeries, and one didn't work, and then the other one they were only able to get a biopsy because my lung tumor is right by my heart, and so they weren't able to remove the tumor. So if you can't remove a tumor, that means you have to kill the tumor with chemo and radiation, like really hardcore. So I had 8 months. I had 8 weeks of radiation every single day, 5 days a week, and then I had 8 months of chemo. And I tell you, Mike, I was sicker than sick. I'm telling you, I was sick, but it worked. It killed it. And I was diagnosed like a month ago of being free from cancer. And then tomorrow, actually, I have to go get a PET scan and blood work. And so that way I have to go to the hospital every 3 months and get a PET scan. And PET scan is like a really in-depth X-ray that shows if you have cancer or not. So I'll do that again tomorrow. But yeah, so I've been cancer free, and that which also means I've been treatment free. I haven't had any chemo in over a month, and so I was thinking that I would be really feel really good by now, but I don't. I'm still sick all the time. It's really too bad, but I know that I know that things will be better eventually. And the doctors did say, you know, that it will take a long time because I got poisoned really, really seriously from head to toe. So, you know, when they do that to you, it takes your body a long time to recover from all that damage that was done. It's all been really scary, but it's, you know, getting that you're cancer free thing, you know, I was so happy. I didn't know that you could be that happy. You know what I mean? but now I'm impatient, and I want to feel better. And I still can't sing very well. And the doctor said, you know, it breaks my heart. He said, "You might not be able to sing anymore, but I can sing, but I just can't." Speaking of Neil Young, a little while ago, I'll take out all my old Neil Young records because we sing in the same key and I know all those words. So I put on the records every day these days and try to sing along with it. And after one song, I have to sit down and I'm huffing and puffing and I feel really sick. So I just have to keep trying about singing again. And I'm sure like in 6 months, if I just keep trying and trying and trying, I'm thinking I'll be able to get back on stage again, because I have a country band. I put together a really great country band out here. We only did 2 shows and then I got diagnosed with cancer, so it was sad.
And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much to Pearl for her patience and her time. And another big thank you to Randy Hecker, who introduced me to Pearl. And a quick reminder that you can also buy my book on 80s musicians and where they are today, 80s Redux, and its sequel, Live Through That, on 90s artists, wherever you buy your books. And if you like this show, please leave us a review where you're listening. It always helps others find us. And of course, subscribe so that you'll know when the latest episode comes out. You can follow me on Threads at Mike Hipple and Facebook at Mike Hipple Photo, all one word. Thanks for listening.